same shirt. This is my comfort sweater. I wear it all the time. I love it so much. If I am in the same shirt that you've seen me in 100 times, I promise you I do wash it. I do. It's just my comfort sweater.
Hi, hello, how's it going? How y'all doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing the next review in my palette roulette series, in which I review a palette or two, maybe not the brandest newest thing. I show you some swatches and some eye looks, and I tell you the good, the bad, the ugly about the palettes that I'm reviewing, and then we pull new palettes and we do it all over again. And today I'm going to be reviewing the Unearthly Devour palette, which is what is on my eyes today, as well as the Cosmic Beauty / Brushes Undergrowth palette. I never know what this brand's name is, but I am excited to talk to you guys about these two palettes, and if you're just as excited to listen to it, please keep on watching. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high and colorful beauty and self-care. Ultimately, this is my self-care. I love coming out here talking to you about the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things coming into my collection, rolling out of my collection, and I hope that you're here for it. And if you are, please do all the YouTubey things, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, let YouTube know that you like me and want to see more from me, and I would appreciate it because I'm out here just doing my thing and trying to get to 2K. So that's where we're at today. I hope that you guys enjoy the video, and let's just jump in. I actually took inspiration from this look. I typed in Unearthly Devour palette on Google, trying to see if I could find like a star rating on it, which I don't have for you, but there was a video done by a YouTuber, Caitlin House Makeup, about a year ago when this palette launched, and the picture of her with this eye look was on the front of her video. It was her thumbnail, and I was like, that look is beautiful. So I took some inspiration from her, and that is what I have done today. I will link her video down in the description box. She's a micro influencer, much like ourselves out here, less than 5K, and let's just show her some love down there. Let's show her some love. So with that said, let's go ahead and start with this Unearthly Devour palette, because I'm super excited to talk to you about both of these palettes, to be honest, but this is what's on my eyes. So let's start here. So this is the Unearthly Devour palette. This is a $60 palette. It does have 0.81 ounces of product in it, or 0.0657 ounces per pan. So I just rounded up to 0.07 ounces per pan. There are 12 shades in it, 5 mattes, 7 shifty shimmers. 6 of them are unsafe for eye use. If that is something that bothers you, you will note that it does say eyeshadow and pressed pigment palette on it, and when we get to the swatches, I will notate which ones are pressed pigments for you and which ones aren't. That does mean that half of this palette, if you're somebody who sticks to the rules, should not be used on your eyes. I will tell you, 4 of the 7 shades that I have on my eyes today are not safe for eye use. So obviously I'm not somebody who sticks to the rules. I like to forge my own way in this world and decide what's good for me and what isn't good for me. And sometimes I think that gets me in trouble, but all that aside, let's just move on. This is the exterior packaging. They always have such beautiful artwork for their brands, and all of their palettes come in really beautiful boxes. I've saved every single one of them because they're just so pretty. This initially was part of a collection that you could only purchase in collection mode, and it was launched as their Halloween collection last year. This is a cruelty-free and vegan brand, and you can see all those markers down here on the back side of the palette, where it's also going to give you some information on the formulation of each different kind of either eyeshadow or pressed pigment, as well as where to find the company, where it's distributed from, who makes it, blah, blah, blah. You open up the palette, it does have a mirror, which is fantastic. And then this is the palette. I would expect, honestly, it is just a cardboard packaging with a really, I mean, decent magnet, but not like a hugely magnetic magnet, if that makes any sense. But I would expect for $60 that it be this beautiful artwork, that it have a mirror, that it be a beautiful presentation of a palette, and Unearthly really does do the thing. So this is what the inside of the palette looks like. You can see that these are very distinctly divided into two different color stories. We have a red row up here, red purple row up here, and then we have a green row down here. I do think that this palette is missing some of those blending shades. It doesn't go really light to really deep, which is something that I do like in my palette structures. But I didn't find that that got in the way of me using this palette at all. I had so much fun with this palette. So it is missing some of those midtones, right? And some of those lighter shades for blending or for just putting into a crease. And I do think that some of these shades, like this one specifically, can tend to get just a little bit patchy without those midtones. So I did find myself mixing this one with this one to just kind of give it a little bit more oomph. I do feel like the red section is missing more of those midtones. You can kind of use these two tones here as the light and the mid in the green row, but the red really just has a deep and then, or a deep and a deeper. So that said, you will end up with a pretty deep eye look almost every single time that you use this palette, right? The light shades in this palette, these three here, are all shimmers. They're kind of sheer. They're not really a matte that you can use to help blend out a look. You're gonna end up with almost every single time a deep dark look. Red and green in a palette sometimes could lend to a little bit more of a Christmas story than a Halloween story, but I do think that this lends more to Halloween. It definitely has a Beetlejuice vibe to it, which I 100% love, and absolutely love that the artwork on it is also kind of Halloween. Like we have Venus flytrap here eating, you know, a human, which is morbid, but also totally unearthly and amazing. The mattes in here are thin and blendable, buildable. And like I said, I do think that we're missing a little bit in the mid-tone range. So some of them are a little bit more hard to blend, but none of them get really patchy, so to speak, as long as you're like taking your time and building slowly and blending slowly. So I wouldn't say that these blend with ease, but I also wouldn't say that they're super hard to blend and get a really decent eye look. Like it didn't take me long to get this eye look today, to be honest. And there's a lot of blending that went into this eye look today. And even here where the green and the red kind of overlap, I don't feel like it got super muddy. You can definitely tell that there's a lime slimy green in there and that like red, pinky, purpley color. It's not like just a brown, right? It didn't turn into a mustard yellow or anything like that. It really does blend very, very well for the colors that are in here. The shimmers are gorgeous. Three of them, like I said, these three over here are more of that like sheer formulation. They go over a color really well, and any color underneath is really going to transform them. Today I don't really have a color underneath either one of them, and I did use all three. The other ones, these like 1, 2, 3, 4, are a little bit more opaque, a little bit more dense, but still very, very thin and easy to apply and use. And I appreciate their thinness while also their opacity because they're so thin, it doesn't exacerbate any texture that is going on your eye, and it also doesn't create any texture that you might not have known was there, as many duo but specifically multi-chromes do. I know that I can wear multi-chromes on my eyes that make my eyes look 90 years old just because of the sheer multi-chrome aspect of the shadow. I don't feel like these do that. There is little to no fallout with this palette, not even in the shimmers, which I was super excited about. Specifically if you use a tacky primer with the shimmers. If you don't use a tacky primer with the shimmers, they are going to stick to your eye, but they are also going to fall out throughout the day. That said, the shimmers are going to work better, be a little bit more impactful on your eye with a tacky base underneath. And I also, as you guys can see, like this white in my brow bone is actually the base that I put underneath my eyeshadow. I'm using the About Face matte fluid eye paint underneath, and so this white is that, and I think it helps the eyeshadows pop on my eyes versus just a flesh colored eye primer. I do feel like these do better with an eye primer underneath them, even the mattes, for blendability reasons. It helps them just like smoothly pass over the eye. It doesn't like catch on certain areas of your eye, especially if you have like oily eyelids. I don't have that problem, but I do know that if I'm using a different kind of primer, these mattes did stick to certain areas of my eye. And I do have some, is it this eye? Yes, I do have some eczema right here in the inner corner of this eye that tends to catch shadow as well. And I don't feel like it has done that with these shadows, but only when utilizing a primer to help with that. What I can say about these shimmers that I was really super pleased about is there's no hard pan on these. I know with the last palette that I just reviewed, the Don't Be Jelly palette, I was so sad because I use my fingers most with the shimmers in these palettes because that's how they apply best. And every time I stuck my fingers in a shimmer in that palette, it felt like it got hard pan. This one doesn't. I feel like every eyeshadow palette that I use from Unearthly is just better than the last one. And maybe that's, I think this is one of the newest ones that I have from them, and the Not Normal, which is the first one I used, was one of the oldest maybe. So maybe that's why. So they're consistent in formulation, but it continues to just be better than the last, which I appreciate from them. They're not really changing it up so much that you notice like huge differences. You just notice that it is better than the last one. No fallout to speak of at all. No hard pan, and the wear time on these is approximately 8 hours that I can remember. I don't think I ever had these on my eyes for longer than 8 hours in an eye look that I produced with these shadows. So overall, I think Unearthly is honestly becoming one of my favorite brands just because of their ingenuity and their flex with their beautiful, beautiful shimmers that are not finicky and are not hard to use. And because they continue to do better in formulation without completely changing the formula, so that there are parts of it that you hate and parts of it that you like, but that you continue just to love their formula and it continues to get better, I have to say this is becoming slowly but surely one of my favorite brands. Now, I really do have other brands that I want to try from them, or other brands that I want to try in the indie space, and I don't have a lot of history in the like indie space like a lot of my peers out here, but I am slowly but surely dabbling in more and more indie brands, and I really do love Unearthly. Now this palette is $60, and when you look at this palette for $60 that has 12 shadows in it, and this palette that has multi-chromes in it as well for $30, like you think, and 20 shadows, you think through your head, okay, is it worth it? Honestly, I got mine on a discount, so always shop the indie brand discounts because there's always something going on the indie websites. And also it's gonna be worth it dependent on the person. Like, I think it's worth it. I spent, you know, however much I spent on it, and I'm really happy to have it in my collection. I loved every single minute of having this palette in use. Let's walk through the shadows. I'm just gonna, of course, go first row over, second row over, and tell you what we've got here. I'm not like live swatching them these days, you guys know that, but I do try and get all kinds of different pictures of it. Here is a close-up of the palette once again, so you guys can see the different shadows in this palette, and hopefully some of that flippiness that's happening over here in these guys. But let's talk about the shadows. Okay, let's start with Gruesome. Gruesome is a plummy colored brown shimmer. It does have some purple and gold sparkles in it, so it does have a tiny bit of shiftiness to it, but it's very subtle, and it really only shifts when you're putting it with, you know, more purple in tone. I did mix it with some of my shadows in like my Deck of Panning palette, as well as like some of the pinks in my newest Deck of Panning palette, the Too Faced Natural Nudes, and it does shift a little bit more purpley when paired with those than it does with the reds and the greens in this palette. It is truly beautiful. Then we have Demolish. Demolish is one of the pressed pigment shadows, not safe for eye use. It is a metallic plum with pink shimmers, and this is just truly beautiful. I did use Gruesome and Demolish in a single eye look that looked very much like a brown smoky eye. So pretty, these two stacked on top of each other. Then we have Carnivore. Carnivore is also a pressed pigment. This is an ox blood red matte. Then we have Ravage. Ravage is a burgundy metallic. Devour is a sangria red matte. Probably my favorite to use in this palette. I really did love this shadow, but when blended out, it performs more like a fuchsia than it does a red. Then we have Snack, which is the website says white mashed multi-chrome with pink, gold, and peach shifting. I don't know what white mashed means, but this is honestly, it's a sheer multi-chrome that looks white in the pan, but it is like a pink to gold to peach look, and head on, it looks like white, but it doesn't look, it looks more peachy than it looks. It went really well with that top row. And I think I forgot to say, but Devour was also one of the pressed pigments shadows. Snack is not. Next row down, we have Consume. This is our green row. This is a blackened green matte. I do think that this one was more green than black, whereas there is also one of these in the Undergrowth palette that I think was more black than green. Beautiful for outer corner work. Yeah, really loved this shade. Then we have Instinct. Instinct is a metallic teal with blue shimmers. It looks, I think it's supposed to be green, but it looks more teal because of the blue shimmers that are in it. It's super pretty, and it does kind of shift just a little bit because of the different shimmers versus the background shade, but it is really pretty in an eye look. Then we have Prey, which is a true green matte, like I would say like pine green. It is in my eye look today. We also have Snap, which is a pressed pigment, and it is that bright slime green matte that is in my eye look today. We have Trap, which is also a pressed pigment. This is an iridescent white passing multi-chrome as well. It is supposed to be green. It says it's an iridescent green on the website, but I found this actually to be more pinky peachy than it was green. Head on, it looks green. In an eye look, it looks kind of peachy pink. And I'm not offended by that, but because it was in the green row, I thought it was going to be more green, and it just wasn't. So it was kind of disappointing the first time I put it in an eye look, because it was a green eye look, and I was like, oh, that's not going to work for me. But very, very pretty. And then we have Bite. Bite is a white base iridescent mint with a purple shift. Straight on, it looks kind of lavender, white passing, but it does have a minty green, purpley, silvery shift to it. So those are the shades in this palette, and I think that you guys can see, hopefully I got my B-roll in here, and you guys are able to see like just the pure beauty that is in these shadows, specifically the shimmers. I definitely think that this palette stands apart because of its shimmers, and that is the draw, right? The call to action from this palette is the beautiful shimmers in this palette. I am impressed with their shimmers, to be honest. They're always just so beautiful and go on to the eye so easily and show up on the eye in so many different ways. Like, they're just pretty. They're just pretty. And I would hesitate to not recommend this to somebody who's looking for a palette of this nature. Now, I would say if you need an eye look that is going to be pretty, you could probably get that from this palette. If you need an eye look that is going to be demure, are we going with that these days? You're not going to get that from this palette, right? This is a color lovers palette. This is not a palette for a person who doesn't love color. If you don't love color, you're not ever going to use this palette. Even though these shimmers are beautiful, they're also pretty colorful. So except for those three like iridescent or white passing ones, like they look very white on my lids in the camera, but hopefully I'm able to get a picture of them that showcases that they are just full of shiftiness and just truly beautiful. I would 100% of the time recommend that palette to a person who's interested. And I think of the, I think I've now tried 4 Unearthly palettes, right? Devour, Dreamer, Don't Be Jelly, and Lore. And I think that my 2 favorites right now are Dreamer and Devour. Like those are hands down my favorites. And I think that this one really represents the same kind of formulation that I was feeling I got from the Dreamer palette, and better than what I feel like I got from the Don't Be Jelly palette and the Lore palette. Not that either one of those palettes are bad. They're just, I feel like this one was better. And it's probably, I'm not sure what the, because I've only followed Unearthly for a short period of time. I'm not sure what the hierarchy is as far as which palette came first. So I think that those palettes, though, this one I think though is the latest of the ones that I have in my collection because it was just put out last year. And the second palette I have to go over with you is the Cosmic Brushes. I'm just gonna call it Cosmic Brushes Undergrowth palette, and this palette looks like this. What a beautiful palette, right? And green is my favorite color, so you had to have known I was gonna end up getting this palette. I think truly between the Serenity palette and this palette, I could no longer wait to purchase something from Cosmic Brushes because this green palette was everything to me. This palette is $37. It has 0.73 ounces of product in it, or 0.0365 ounces per pan, or rounded up to 0.04 ounces per pan. And it is inspired by nature's undergrowth. It's very grungy and murky in tone. It has 20 shades, 12 of them are mattes, 8 of them are shimmers, and in those 8 shimmers are inclusive of 3 shifty shades, so 2 of them being multi-chromes and 1 being a duochrome. There are 10 shadows in this palette that are pressed pigments, so 10 shadows that are not safe for eye use. So half of them in this palette, not safe for eye use, half of them in this palette, not safe for eye use. I will tell you, I used every single one of these on my eyes. I did not notice any kind of irritation with either palette, to be honest, and I only noticed staining with the dark green and the pinks, reds in this palette. So nothing to speak of, and my eyes are super sensitive. This is the back of the palette. The back of the palette does show that this palette is cruelty-free and vegan, which it doesn't showcase on the palette, but it does tell you that online. It does say it has a 24-month shelf life, and it is distributed out of the UK. Again, the not safe for eye use is only a US thing. It's not in any other country thing. I've spoken this ad nauseum on my channel, so I think it's ridiculous. But you do you. You think you do you. It does have a mirror, and it has 20 eyeshadows. Again, $37 for 20 eyeshadows, 2 of them being multi-chromes, 1 of them being a duochrome. $60 for 12 eyeshadows with, I think, 3 multi-chromes and 2 duochromes and 2 regular old shimmers. So you figure out what's worth it to you. The regular shimmers in this palette are shifty, much like the regular shimmers in the Devour palette, though I think that there's just a lot of idiosyncrasies in this palette as well that make it more than worth that $37 that you're going to be charged for this. This does have a 4.95 star rating on the the Cosmic Brushes website. It does have 129 reviews on it, and I was not able to find any other star rating on this palette. As you can see, this is an all green, gold, murky, grungy tone eyeshadow palette. This eyeshadow palette is pigmented but super easy to blend. I do think that the shadows that Cosmic Beauty puts out are magical shadows. Like, I really do think that they blend themselves for the most part. There was never an instance in blending these shadows where I felt like it was patchy or I had to work super hard to blend the shadows, even with this one here, which is a really blackened green that is more black than green, unlike the one in the Unearthly palette. These really are pigmented. They easily blend. They keep their color on blend. They don't like blend out to a completely different color. Not that I'm mad at this pink, but when you blend that Devour shade enough, it turns pink, which is fine because the palette is pink, right? So it's still maintaining kind of that like pinky ready tone. These ones I think really stay their exact shade. Even this chartreuse, even this like mint, even this like mustard green, this mustard murky green, it really did stay those colors. And I do have this blended in an eye look that I just did yesterday and did a couple of videos in that eye look and was just surprised at how long these shadows lasted. The wear time is approximately 10 hours, and that is with a primer. Without a primer, I think that it was negatable. I think it was somewhere around 8 hours without a primer, but they definitely are best with a primer for like my eyes that are aging eyes that have eczema, whatever it is. They really did work better for me for blendability with a primer over the top of it. I did also use a tacky primer with the shimmers because I just, in most cases, I'm gonna always feel like a tacky primer with the shimmers is gonna make them look and appear better and stick better to the eyes. I think I wore these without a tacky primer twice, and I don't really think I had any problems with the shadows moving or flaking off for me throughout the day when I didn't wear that tacky primer, but I also didn't have the eyeshadow on for an extended period of time. I think it was maybe 5 hours before I took the eyeshadows off when I wasn't using a tacky primer. I also think that these shadows worked really well with a brush and really well with the finger. Of course, I usually do finger application for my shimmers. I feel like that always works best for me, but these ones also picked up on a brush, which is surprising because not a lot of shimmers, especially like these kind of shimmers, pick up on a brush really in a girthy way and allow you to really use them in the same way that you would use them with your finger. There was no staining that I noticed with this palette, and there was minimal fallout with this palette, even with the shimmers, which I am super happy about. The shimmers in this palette feel more dense, and they were definitely more dense than the ones in the Devour palette by Unearthly, so I think that's where I really gauged how thick or girthy they were, was looking at the shimmers that I was using in the Devour palette versus these ones. But that doesn't mean that they're so heavy that they cause texture or creasing in an eye look. I never noticed any kind of texture while using them, and I never noticed any kind of creasing while using them either. But I'm also not a person who suffers from creasing with my eyeshadows typically. There are a few eyeshadows that I have utilized in the past that I have seen creasing with, but it's not a typical thing for me. So I mentioned it because a lot of people like to know those things, but I also need to remind everybody that I'm just not a person that suffers from eyeshadows creasing on me very often. Yes, I have kind of hooded eyelids, but never had eyeshadow creasing issues. It just doesn't happen. Even though they are that more dense formula, I never noticed any kind of creasing with these, which sometimes you get from a thicker shimmer formula. I had 0 problems utilizing this palette for every single eye look that I created with it. I had so much fun with it. It is a palette, however, that if you are not into green and you are not into gold, you are not going to like, because all of these shimmers, as beautiful as they are and as different as they look in the pan, all of them lean very gold. There isn't a whole lot of differences in these shimmers beyond gold. Different shades of gold, but it's going to be a gold shimmer for the most part. I think the only one that falls outside of that is like this one that definitely looks more minty than it does gold. Oh, and this one that looks actually pretty brown in an eye look, but it's a beautiful brown. The rest of them do lean very gold. And when there's 8 shimmers in the palette, I would hope, especially for a green palette, that there would be a little bit more variety in the shimmers than there really was with this. That said, there are there's a duochrome and 2 multichromes in here. This is a multichrome and this is a multichrome. And head on, they look green, gold, kind of like antique-y. But on the eye, their shift is very heavily gold. This one is a duochrome and it looks head on gold. And on the eye look, it also looks more gold. Just off to the side, you can see a little bit of a green peeking through there. But these are super beautiful. This palette is not for the person that wants a pretty eye look. I don't think there's any eye look that I got out of this that would be considered pretty. They're beautiful eye looks, but they're not pretty eye looks, if you know what I mean. I would also say that, again, this is not a palette for a person that wants a demure eye look. Are we still using that word? Because there is nothing demure about this palette. What I do love is that it does go like really, really light to really, really deep in these 2 shades here. So you are going to get some variety in what you're able to do, even from a all matte eye look perspective. You do have a row of like neutrals down here, but they're more orange than they are brown. I also love that all the shadows in here really play well with each other. There isn't any combination in this eyeshadow palette that you're going to be sorry that you put together, because they all really do work together as one whole unit. The shimmers are really, really pretty. The mattes blend like a dream. Like it's just a really all around great eyeshadow palette. I would even say, and I did say this in a video that I recorded yesterday that you guys will see, that you already have seen. If you have, I'll link it up here, but it is my No Pan Left Behind for Q1 update. I would honestly venture to say that this might even be better than Yucca in terms of blendability. I don't think it's the same. Obviously, it's not the same formula. I am a Natasha Denona stan as it pertains to her formula, but I do think that this is an easier use formula for like new people just venturing into greens, colors, and people who don't want to put up with the fickle nature of blendability of some of the more higher end or luxury eyeshadows, right? With Natasha Denona, you have to pat more than you blend, and you have to definitely make sure that you get it in place before you start to blend. Not that that's a bad thing. I don't think that that's a bad thing at all. Again, I am a Natasha Denona stan, but I do think that this is probably a better green formulation for people who don't know anything about Natasha Denona's formula or are really new into green eyeshadows. That seems so crazy to say because I love Natasha, but I do think that I did not encounter any kind of problems with this palette that I think could have transpired with the Natasha Denona palette. And sometimes I think it's because of her cream to powder formula, if I'm honest with you. And because she is consistently changing her formulations. And I honestly think that her formula from the beginning of time to current day has actually gone downhill. And that's really sad to say. I just think that this is a better palette. And it's half the price. It's half the price. That said, I do think that I appreciate some of the things out of the Natasha Denona palette that I'm not really getting from this, and that is that this is mostly warm tone eyeshadows, and I would have loved just a little bit more cool tone as well in here instead of this like orange row. What could we have put in here instead to make this like a full-fledged, all you need is this palette, green eyeshadow palette. So not that I don't love it, because I absolutely do, and I can make a good eye look out of this for sure. For sure. So let's go through the shades. I am gonna, of course, start with this first row over and then just keep on going down with it. Okay, first row, we have Vegetation, which is a cool tone metallic sagey green. This is really a beautiful metallic in this palette. It just was one of the only cool tone shades in here, so it didn't really, there really wasn't a purpose for it in addition to the one that's right next to it, which is Herbarium, which is also a cool toned green. It is more on the pastel side, and it is one of the pressed pigments that is not safe for eye use. It is a matte. It's beautiful. They're beautiful. Both of them are beautiful. I just feel like they're two of maybe 4 shadows in this palette that I don't think really did anything for this palette, because there was really nothing to go with them. The next one is Algae. Algae is a light lime green matte. I wouldn't say lime green, actually. That's what the website says, but I think it's more of a darker sage green. Then we have Fern, which is the second of 10 pressed pigments. Fern is an olive green matte. Wilderness is a patinaed gold metallic. It does have a little bit of a shiftiness in it to green. The third of 10 pressed pigments in here is Nettle. Nettle is a dark, grungy, evergreen matte. Then we have Undergrowth, and Undergrowth is the first of 2 multichromes in this palette, and it is a green, brown, gold multichrome. Kind of also has a little bit of a red shiftiness to it. In my humble opinion, it's super high shine. I've loved this shadow. Then we have Murky, which is another pressed pigment. It is a dark brownish khaki green matte. Swamp is another pressed pigment. It is a muted brown metallic. This is actually a really beautiful brown metallic. I liked this shade a lot in like a halo eye. Bark is that blackened green. It's a very, very dark green matte. It performs more as a black in an eye look. There is a slight hint of green to it though. When you blend it out, it does have a slight like olivey green attachment to it. Definitely an olivey green undertone. Then we have Boggy. Boggy is a khaki green brown duochrome. This is the one duochrome in the palette, and it is also pretty high shine. We have Roots, which is an olivey brown matte. It is really truly a warm tone brown with an olive undertone to it. We have Marsh, which is another pressed pigment. It is a murky mustard yellow green matte. Lichen, which is another pressed pigment. It is an almost neon green chartreuse matte. I found this went really, really well over the top of like my chartreuse melt gel eyeliner, or I also have a Natasha Denona chartreuse eyeliner, the pencil eyeliner that I put into the inner corner of some of my eye looks, and those made this shade pop. Like a white base made this shade pop. It's a truly beautiful chartreuse. This is my favorite of all colors of green, but my favorite. We have Fireflies, which is another multichrome. It is a gold to teal to corally multichrome. Then we have Clay, which is another pressed pigment. It is a mid-tone murky orange matte, kind of terracotta, like a light terracotta, like a just made terracotta. We have Fungi, which is a neutral toned gold metallic. I really did like this gold metallic because it did have a slightly champagne-y shift to it, or champagne-y look to it, depending on what you put it with in an eye look. It was one that I was consistently drawn to because I did like it. Then we have Reeds, which is a yellow toned beige. It's like a yellowy olive. It's like a combination of Marsh which is the murky mustard yellow green. It's a combination of that and beige. That's like if you mix those two shades, that's what I imagine you would get, is this Reed's shade. It really didn't do the palette any favors either, except for blending out. It wasn't a shade that I could put into my inner corner or my brow bone. It was just a slight bit too dark to go into either of those areas, so it was only good for like blending out shades. Then we have cordyceps, I think. I'm not sure how to say that. I don't even know what those are. Maybe there's some kind of mushroom. I'm not sure. But this is also a pressed pigment, and it is a bright bronze metallic. And then the last shade, the last pressed pigment, is sludge, and that is a terracotta brown matte. It leans more brown than terracotta, but still is on the orange side. Overall, I think that this is a beautiful palette. I'm so happy to have it in my collection, and I think I've said like so many things about this palette and so many things that I'm shocked that came out of my mouth, but also I just cannot believe that this brand has the level of eyeshadows that they do for the price point. I don't think that there is anything hugely spectacular about their shimmers. Like, I think that when I'm looking at shimmers, maybe, you know, Unearthly has better shimmers. Maybe Adept has better shimmers. Those palettes are also more expensive. Like, when I think about it in terms of that, like, these are amazing shimmers. And especially for the price. I don't know. I just cannot believe that this brand can get away with selling their palettes as inexpensive as they do. So I am a fan for life as far as cosmic brushes go, because their mattes are really, really good. Really, really blendable. Magical, like I said, because they just about blend themselves. And their shimmers are really also very good. They're a little bit more thick than I like, but not nearly as thick as they could be for the kind of shadow that they are. So 100% would recommend this palette to anybody that's interested in green eyeshadow palettes. This could be your everyday green eyeshadow palette, and if you were interested in yucca and don't have it, this is honestly a better palette to pick up. There's more shadows in it, and it's an easier formula, in my humble opinion. One of my friend Melissa said, hold on, let me grab it because I told her I was going to start using it. In my grandiose and objectively correct deductions, instead of in my humble opinion. Thank you, Melissa, for this. It is true. I say in my humble opinion a lot, but I don't know that my opinion is humble. That said, I'm going to go pull new palettes. I'll be right back. I think I said when I was doing my palette collection and declutter that the next two palettes I was going to bring into my palette roulette were these two. And I'm going to stick to those words because it's been a minute since I've done a Danessa Myricks review, and these are both Danessa Myricks palettes, and I've had them in my drawer of shame for so long. So I bought this when it first came out. I bought this one at the same time. I think that was October. That was so long ago. I am going to bring these in. Now, do I think that this is going to give me everything I need for this palette? Probably not, because this is very neutral and this is very colorful and magnificent. But I do have some like palettes that I am using also in my deck of panning. I have my spring build your own palette that I just did, so I have some colorful shadows that I can also pair with that. So that said, these are the palettes that I'll be using in the next palette roulette. So if this video was interesting to you, if you had a good time, if listening to me review these two palettes sounds interesting to you, again, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm here every single week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I do these palette reviews pretty often on my channel, so I would love to have you along for this crazy ride of mine. Please let me know down in the comments section that you subscribed. I'd love to welcome you personally. If you know anything or have any other thoughts and opinions about these two palettes, please let us know down in the comments section. I would be interested to hear your thoughts, and if you made it this whole way, please put a 4-leaf clover down in the comment section with your comments, because that green palette gives me life. All the greens that I was dealing with this week give me life. Or the Joker for my current eye look. So I don't think there's Beetlejuice. Is there a Joker? Is there a Joker down there? Who knows? Who knows? Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you and yours are well. I hope that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best that you can. I hope that you are all loving each other, being kind humans, and living your best life. And until next time, bye friends.